So welcome to the, I think, fifth or sixth edition of Tokenomics Study Group. I'm Michael Keating. This is the Kernel Fellowship, part of the Tokenomics Build Guild within Kernel Fellowship. We organized this to help folks who are interested in tokenomics and token communities go a bit deeper into one particularly interesting token or protocol that the community votes on every week. We choose a new one every week and we discuss it in as much depth as we can, sometimes with the help of an outside expert, sometimes just based on our own expertise and curiosity. And this week we are discussing Celo, which is a very exciting layer one blockchain that has as its mission bringing prosperity, economic prosperity and economic freedom to the whole world, which a lot of fintech companies and blockchain companies say that, but Celo has a fairly credible claim to it because they build their blockchain around mobile use and very fast and low cost transactions to make it useful for day-to-day monetary activity as opposed to like more like investing activities. Celo does have DeFi. So exciting to figure out specifically how, if we can, Celo designed their tokenomics, their incentives, their game theory to make it possible for them to be so inclusive and to build a protocol that has the potential to reach billions of people, in a way that I think few other blockchains can really credibly claim right now. So I'm not a Celo expert, but I've been trying to ramp up. We have with us Lisa Lee, who works at Volara, which is a Celo wallet, and Lisa's going to be helping us kind of facilitate our conversation. Lisa, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah. Hi guys. I am an engineer at Volara. I just joined in September. So Volara was the wallet team on the core Celo team. We spinned out recently to become its own entity for like licensing and regulation reasons. So I'll try my best to answer any questions and facilitate the conversation.
Awesome. And just to remind folks, we try to make these conversations not intros to a particular crypto, but a little maybe sort of the next step. So hopefully those of you who are participating have maybe taken the time to watch the video or read the readings that Lisa posted. And it doesn't mean you can't ask basic questions, but the spirit of this is to try to get to a slightly more sophisticated understanding than we could get just on our own reading blogs. And we'll run for about an hour. And I think, let me make sure that everyone has access to the Figma. I'll post that in the chat now. We'll use this whiteboard as a kind of an organizing space for our questions and any kind of diagramming that we're able to do to try to understand, to try to better understand the protocol. So why don't we just kick it off with a question of like what makes Celo special? Like why is it different? Like there's a lot of layer one blockchains out there, and what are they trying to accomplish? And then and then it'd be interesting if anybody has any insights into what they've done kind of tokenomically to try to further that. So does anybody want to just give us the kind of basic, like why Celo, what does Celo think is special about Celo? Could cold call people, but thanks. Can anybody jump in and help me out?
Well, I could help out in the sense of like I ask another question to the group, but so being not from Brazil but living in Brazil for 10 years, I can see the need for a mobile first or mobile only blockchain solution. Just to give a bit of context, here we're dealing with, in Brazil, 200 million people. Cell phone is the first and only computer or computing device for many of the population. Many population is semi-literate, no email addresses. So I could see why we would want to target this demographic. My question is, how is Celo actually doing this? Because these problems are not easy problems to overcome, and as far as I've studied and read up about it, it's rather complex. So how do we kind of abstract that complexity to bring a good mobile experience for blockchain users?
Does anybody have a sense of how Celo has tried to do that? Like why, like what makes them more mobile than other blockchains, or what allows Celo to be used more like cash than other cryptos, and makes it as applicable to some of the use cases that Greg can maybe see around him in Brazil. All right, I'll keep prompting until we can get. What time zone are you all in? I'm on the West Coast, so I'm the one who should still be processing my coffee. The main thing is that you can use your phone number as your as sort of a part of your public key, and like someone can just send Celo to your phone number, and it's like, but how do you just send Celo to someone's phone number? And so that's, I think that's one of the things that I think that makes it help solve some of what Greg was alluding to, is that the on-ramp to a lot of blockchains is pretty cumbersome and can be kind of technical and intimidating, and can often require a PC or something like that. But people can be kind of onboarded to Celo just by having been sent some Celo or something like that through to their phone number, and then by having the person who sent it to their phone number let them know that they'd sent them some Celo to their phone number.
And also I would add mapping the phone number to a cryptographic address so that people don't have to copy paste the long addresses, especially if they're illiterate or semi-illiterate and don't know what they're actually doing. Because even for us, sometimes you copy the wrong address or make a small mistake, and when you're intending to not do that, and obviously it causes problems.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, so just giving a little bit details on how we do it. So we actually have, like, when you create like a wallet, we actually give you two addresses. One address is like the normal, like a self-custodial wallet address, and then the other one is after you verify your phone number, we give you like a Meta transaction wallet address. That address is mapped to your phone number. So like, even if, say, you lost this wallet, and then you can, in the future, you can recover this account with like your phone number. That's something we have been like thinking about in terms of designs.
Can I also follow up with a question? So my understanding is that the mobile, there's blockchain and people don't know how to interact with the blockchain. So that's how like Valero comes in, you build this app that's very easy to use, but it's not specific to Celo though, right? So you can build that on Tether, on USDC, on anything. Just trying to understand, I feel like there are two parts here. One is the stablecoin, and that is pretty remarkable. But separately, there's the mobile thing. But technically, you can build that mobile on any other stable coins, right? To achieve the same, like a function or improvement of life you're achieving.
So I guess there's a confusion about like how Web3 how those like Web3 applications talk to the blockchains, the underlying blockchain. So like this wallet, like Valora specifically, we talk to like It's basically like reading from a database. So we talk to like Celo as a blockchain. It wasn't built to talk to other things, but yeah, like there are other wallets that talk to different blockchains. If that answers.
I think I was with Chuck. I think from a UI point of view, I think I would totally agree with Chuck. I think where the assumption of the kind of portability of that UI, across various blockchains gets weaker is when you look at the way that Celo's blockchain works to allow the mobile device to act as a node, or like a light node or an ultralight node, and that which is, I think there are other very light blockchains out there. I don't think very widely adopted yet, but I think that's a key thing with Celo too. So as they're sort of ticking down, there's like the mobileness, there's like the phone number thing, and then there's like, and someone, maybe Lisa or somebody else wants to take a crack at like what it means for the Valar wallet or another Celo client to like actually run on the mobile device, as opposed to being like a web UI, to the blockchain. Or Chuck, if I'm not answering your question, I'm taking it in a weird direction, correct me.
I think those are very helpful. I guess taking a step further, you actually addressed some of my questions, but taking it a step further, I think it will be helpful to understand whether there's any synergy between the blockchain and the wallet. So in other words, can you just build a wallet around Tether or USDC? And that is very easy to use for, like normal. I'm in Brazil. I don't know how to use blockchain, but if there's a platform, an app that can allow me to use that, what's special about Celo versus the other USDC, Tether, other stable coins? Because I still need the stable coin, right? I don't want to transact in Bitcoins, because it will go up 500% one day and minus 80 the other. So I still want a stable coin, but I'm just wondering, if there's any special synergy between Celo and the wallet here.
Yeah, I can try to answer that question. So as we were talking about earlier, that Celo has been designed to be mobile first, mobile friendly. So like one thing what Celo has is we have a decentralized mobile like phone number verification protocol that's built, that's very native to this protocol. So like, for example, you can send someone to a phone number, like you can send some stable coins to a phone number, like on Celo, you cannot do that on other blockchains. That's like one thing that's very native to Celo. And the other thing that Michael has mentioned is we have built our like proof of stake consensus protocol has like a ZK snark based Litecoin protocol that works on mobile devices. So like, what does it mean is that the Litecoin, so normally if like, say I have a mobile client, I talk to Ethereum, I talk to the Ethereum network, I'm to download like 8 gigs of headers to start with. So that's like, it's not very like usable especially for someone in like emerging markets, but their data rates are actually really expensive. So like no one wants to download like 8 gigs of headers on their own mobile phone and run that as a light client. So what Celo has is like, we have a light client that you're able to sync with the network in a fully like peer-to-peer manner. So that is something special, which means when you have a Valar wallet, like it serves as a light client, it was able to sync with the mainnet. It's not a validator, it doesn't validate any transactions, but it was able to like connect and talk to the mainnet like a light client. So that's another thing we have built that other layer ones doesn't have. And I think the other like maybe usability thing that Celo has built for mobile, like being mobile friendly, is like being able to pay for gas fees with stable coins. So yeah, so actually like paying gas like with Ethereum can't, like, because the price goes up and down, it's not super user friendly for someone who wants to do like a smaller amount of transactions. So I think that's maybe a third thing that is like mobile friendly, emerging market friendly, small transaction friendly.
Well, thanks a bunch.
I'll throw one other in there, which I think is interesting, because coming back to the first point about like you can notionally you can send Celo to someone's phone number, is that there's some privacy implications to that, and there's a whole chunk of like of how Celo works, which is about both the attribution of a wallet to a phone number, but also the privacy protection there, which is, I read it. I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand all of it. I found it fairly complicated, but I could tell that it was like some serious thought had gone into not just like making it so that you could use your phone as a wallet, but also, preserving your privacy to a certain degree. And in that sense.
I was just going to comment, and I know we want to get into the tokenomics part of things, but there was just this big IPO last week of this bank called Nubank, NU, 50 billion IPO. They're centralized banking services for the Brazilian population, and they IPO'd for 50 billion, and they probably have 50 million users. And one of their big innovations was the ability to send using just a telephone number, money from one person to the next. But all of those transactions go through the central bank. So everything is logged. In addition to the fact that obviously it's only in Brazilian local currency, which devalues, since I've been to Brazil, it's probably worth a quarter of what it was when I first came in the past 10 years. So yeah, well, it could be worse. I could live in Argentina or Venezuela. But anyway, anyways, I think the privacy concern is huge. But that wallet experience, it's like whatever you think it needs to like be easier. It needs to be even easier than that. I mean, there's just it's very challenging here to reach the masses when we when you're dealing with illiteracy. It's really tough.
Maybe a good time just to do like a sort of a apples to apples check on Celo. I normally would have spent a few minutes putting this into the Figma board, but didn't have a chance to. But like, I think it's 1.3 million wallets or something like that. It's like good just to put it into context, and then I think like a billion-ish of total value locked in various various applications. There's these, just interrupt me, I'm like trying to do this from memory, or anybody else who's got like the stats in front of them. And I think if you compare that, I think market cap is like not diluted is like 1.1 billion or something, and then like fully diluted is like 3. So if there's any of you who think sort of are like to kind of contextualize and be like, well, what's, if Bitcoin's at 1 trillion and Ethereum is hundreds of billions, and like a successful sort of DeFi protocol might be in like the tens of billions or something like that. There's Celo is in some ways still kind of small, but it's like it's real. It's a real, million wallets is real. It's a real thing, but it's also not. It has this promise of kind of global adoption, but is still very much in the early stages of making that happen. And if anybody else has any other context or comments to make about like how to compare and contrast this to other tokens that either you're familiar with or interested in, or other protocols that Celo might otherwise be compared to. Probably worth noting it's a fork of Ethereum, so it's like EVM compatible. Like a lot of it's a totally different chain, but a lot of common ground. It's already proof of stake, which is important for a bunch of things. Any other sort of, I think I'm laying some of this out because I do like the idea of trying to transition the conversation from sort of like, hey, now we know what makes Celo special, or at least the ways in which Celo wants to be special. And like, because this is tokenomics study group, the degree to which we can sort of talk about like how Celo creates incentives and kind of thinks about the game theory of how the the protocol will be participated in to enable those things that Celo wants to be distinguished about itself. I think I messed that up, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. Any other kind of like general points about Celo, compare, contrast to other protocols, like big points that folks should be aware of, in its, to distinguish it in some respect?
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Right.
perfectly locks in, but just Celo announced quite a few months ago $100 million in incentives for builders in the space. I'm just kind of curious how much of that TVL we're looking at is organic-ish, and how much of it is kind of just incentivized, a little bit more artificial. But that could be a discussion for another time.
Oh, definitely. I think the 100 million hasn't gone out yet. I think like we have partnership with like several protocols like Pull Together, Sushi Swap. Like I think we're planning to launching like on 0x. I don't know if 0x is like library or not. I know there's like Curve and a bunch of things coming. So my gut feeling is like we're kind of halfway through it. I do think that our TVL went up a lot, like since like the launch for DeFi for the People initiatives. Also, like on the side note, I think the other thing, like my put Celo as a chain in comparison with the other would be like kind of the technical aspect, like the TPS and stuff. I think Celo right now is at like about 200 TPS, and then Ethereum is like 16 TPS, and then Solana is like Polkadot is like 1,000. Solana is like 50K, I think. So just like putting things in perspective in terms of like chain performance. Although like I think we have a partnership with like, I don't know, some labs that I do not know the detail of, but our goal is to become the fastest EVM compatible chain by end of next year. And I do think like the talents at Celo are good, and it seems like it's a feasible thing to do. So yeah.
That's great context. I'll throw one more in that's important to me, is that Celo seems to be pretty seriously committed on the ecological side, and not just like, so they're proof of stake, right? So they're not using a lot of energy to begin with relative to some other blockchains, and then they're offsetting that. There's a Celo native token called the Moss Carbon offset token, which that's probably a topic for another time. It's basically like a on-chain CO2 offsets. But then they have a thing that some kernel folks are participating in, which I've forgotten what it's called, like the Regenerative Alliance or something like that. Is that
the Climate Collective? Climate Collective.
Yeah, Holly, do you want to just quickly say what that is and how it might affect Celo kind of fundamentally? Like, I think there's going to be some cool projects built, but like, do you know what Celo's goal is in doing that?
Yeah, so their goal is to, in the next 4 years, to turn 40% of their Celo reserve into natural capital backed currency. And so, like, if you want to tokenize the rainforest, any sort of carbon projects. And so they're funding different projects through this Climate Collective. And I, in particular, am working for the Collectivo pilot project. And that's with Curve Labs also. And what we're doing is working on 2 food forests in Curacao. And so we'll be using the Celo blockchain to tokenize those basically. So, is there any other?
Cool. No, it's great. I think that was the point that I was hoping you would get to, which is like this idea of Celo as like a natural capital backed currency. And you see other people doing kind of even more extreme versions, like Klima or something, trying to be like a carbon, like 100% backed by carbon. And then but Celo just this idea. Who's the guy that people cite? There's an economist, Sacred Economics, that folks, kernel type people are into this guy.
Eisenstein? Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, Charles
Yeah.
Eisenstein. Yeah, that's him. Yeah. So the idea that like we should be like what you whatever is backing your money, people get more of. So if you decide that gold is backing your money, people are going to go try to dig it up. Like if you decide that what's backing your money is like a healthy ecosystem, people are going to try to make the ecosystem healthier and get money. So that's a profaning of, I think, what is supposed to be a really great book, but it's an interesting idea. Shall we try to talk about incentives and the kind of economics of this, or the tokenomics rather? If anybody else wants to jump in, I would love to have anyone take it in a direction they'd like. Otherwise, I'll try to sort of point us at some of it, or Lisa, you can just tell us what is what's the tricky stuff.
I'm not sure what's the tricky stuff.
So I think one thing that's tricky is the phone number. Like I think there's not like, to me, as so far, Lisa or somebody else could correct me if it doesn't seem like Celo has like one clever thing, like the way like Olympus has their like rebasing and bonding, or Helium has their proof of coverage, or like Celo just seems to be, there's like a few things that Celo does that are like the short, like in order to run the nodes on the mobile phones, you have to keep you both have like the validation sort of cycles are shorter, so I guess you don't have to download the full blockchain in order for like a validator to be caught up. Then you've got like, this actually will be our first tokenomics study group featuring ZK Snarks. So you've got the ultralight client that that is able to make it even more possible for low bandwidth and low compute devices to participate. And I think so that's like a bucket. Like, is there any sort of game theory or incentives or sort of tokenomics around that? Another is the privacy. Like one of the magic things here is like your mobile phone is your address, or is very closely associated with your address. But then there's privacy, and so like, how do you, like, what is the tokenomics of making that piece, that sort of magical aspect of Celo work? And then the last, I guess, is that, and actually probably the easiest one to talk about, is the stablecoin protocol. So the Stella's ability to have stablecoins in many currencies, and a growing number of currencies, and like the mechanics of that, and the game theoretics around that. That actually maybe is the one we should start with, because I think it's the least technical and of them. Does anybody want to take a crack at how Celo sort of creates like tokenomics that incentivize, that like make stable coins in multiple currencies possible? Or should I say stable coins pegged to multiple currencies possible? This has to do with arbitrage and some algorithms. Chuck?
Yeah, sure. Can I make a comment and then talk
please.
about what my understanding is, and then I actually have a question at the end. So regarding the anonymity of your phone number, I didn't think of that as a very hard question. So you have your phone number, you can just hash it, and you have some hashed thing, and you use that as your public key, and that is unique, and you can back out your phone number. So that didn't strike me as a very hard question. I'm sure Celo does it differently, but that doesn't seem like a super hard question to me. I'm happy to be proven wrong. And
Celo makes it look
we can have
harder
a discussion about that.
I think Celo makes it look harder. Maybe it isn't though. Lisa, I think this one's for you, unless somebody else wants to take it.
I'm not too familiar with like how does I don't think we hash it, but I'm also not super familiar with like how do we how exactly do we like do the privacy part of the identity protocol? If someone else wants to take a step.
Sid, do you want to take a look at it?
Yeah, so I can't speak clearly about Celo, but I agree with Chuck, and if we can just spend a minute on how different countries do it, I can speak, I can share my screen very briefly. I think screen sharing is disabled. So yeah, I'll explain how, for example, India does it with the India stack. So Firstly, I wanted to bring this point earlier as I segue into the actual point that the reason Celo is a big deal is because the cost of mobile internet is in front of you. Like India has the lowest cost for 1 gigabyte of mobile data, and almost everyone has a cell phone. And this means that we had to come up with the whole identity, payment, and data stack earlier than other countries. And we have essentially onboarded more than 2.2 billion people onto this unified payment interface. So this is, you can consider this like the centralized version of how things are done. So the way identity is done in this system, the UPI as we call it, is that you take 4 data points like name, birthday, gender, and your telephone number, and your biometric features. I mean, you'll get some WorldCoin vibes here, like we all had to do our retina scans and fingerprints and all of that to get this done, to essentially give you a hashed version of a 12-digit number, which forms your basic identity. So once you have that, you essentially can bank people onto this unified payments interface. So this was the scenario in 2011. And by 2018, India had like almost 80% of people with a bank account, which would have otherwise taken 46 years. So essentially, this was possible because of these big advances. So what Chuck was saying is right. Like there was a privacy concern with this as well. So you have to hash something to enable the privacy while maintaining the like the convenience of a phone number to help anyone do that. So yeah, I mean, that's how one system did it. I'll dig into Celo's privacy in the rest of this conversation. So yeah, that was just a brief comment unrelated to Celo.
Well, let's go to Chuck's point then, though, which I think is maybe Chuck or Sid or anybody else could. Chuck, I think you're right if what you want to do is like use your phone number as like a login or something, but not actually use your phone number. So like my intuition tells me it's like that works in sort of like a one-sided thing. But if I want to send you money to your phone number, and I don't know, I can't like I don't have the hash of your phone number. Is that where Celo has this whole system for like attesting the authenticity of phone numbers, and they've got a third party, the validators in Celo like actually send SMSs to your device, and that's like part of their role as validators, which is kind of interesting. And then there's like even this other like weird service called like Oblivious Decentralized Identification Service, which involves something called a pepper and is designed to prevent rainbow attacks, which I didn't look up but sounds serious. And so and that's as far as I got with it. But it's definitely not like we hash your phone number and it's cool. And there's like a bunch of steps that they build in. And my guess was that is that it's because it's of the sort of two-sided utility of your identity in a blockchain system. It's not just about you logging into a central service, but it's about this ability for other people to be able to send you money to your phone, but not that's where I lose it actually.
Yeah, I'm totally happy to talk more about this, but my understanding is you get your phone number, you hash it, you get some hash number, and you use that as your identity, and people can send money to that thing. And if you want to send it to a specific phone number, you input that phone number, and that generates the same hash. So that sort of works in my mind. I'm happy to talk more about this, but that's sort of like my intuition of this.
I can chime in a little bit. So basically the idea is that you want to send people money through their phone number. So phone number is kind of like the ENS address, I would say. It's sort of like, say, lisa.eth maps to my wallet address. So similar, like what Celo does is like, so phone number now maps to wallet address. And then the privacy part, I would imagine, is that you don't because all the blockchain data is on chain and it's public. So you don't want other people to just look up your phone number and figure out what is your wallet address and see what's your transaction like on Block Scout. So I think that's so like there is like some kind of like an encryption part where at least you don't have, if you don't have the private key, you wouldn't be able to figure out what is my Celo wallet address with just my phone number. Yeah, that's my understanding. And then we do have like the identity protocol that's implemented that when you connect your phone number with your wallet address, like we have different validators send you like, what's it called, like confirmation text. And then you have to what's it called, input like the verification code from 3 different texts from 3 different validators, and then that will connect your phone number to a wallet address. But yeah, that's kind of my understanding. If that answers questions.
Should we do?
Yeah, I mean, that's
go ahead.
right. And I think that the 2 links that I shared tells us that they have thought a lot about this specific question, and they have shown us diagrams about how they hash and how they go about peppering the whole thing to maintain privacy for the phone number.
Should we do stablecoins? What are people more interested in stablecoins or ZK Snark based ultralight clients?
I'm happy to talk about stablecoin and my understanding of it, and I'll throw a question at the end. Is that fine? I want to keep this flowing. So my understanding is that you know, Celo USD, you want to have it at $1. How do you do that? You buy it when it's below it, and you sell it when it's too high. And the way they do it is in the reserves. So like Tether and USDC, how they do it is they put a bunch of dollar assets in the reserves, and you basically use $1 to buy Celo USD or sell. You do that transaction so that the USD and Tether and USDC is stable. And in the case of Celo, what's in the reserves are a bunch of Celos. So that's good because we're not relying on USD directly. We're relying on the value of these Celos. So we buy or sell Celos against Celo USD, that stable coin, when we think the price of Celo USD is too high or too low. And the way we do that is we have the prices of Celo in the price of Celo and the price of Celo USD from this oracle, so data source of prices. And if so for example, if Celo USD is too high right now, say its value is at $1.01, maybe that's too close. Let's say it's $2 right now. We want it to go back to $1. What we do is we're going to, sorry, my understanding is the other way. I'm going to do the easy way. So suppose Celo USD the price is too low right now. So Celo USD only have a value of 50 cents. We want it to go back to $1. How do we do that? We're going to use the Celo, the native token, in our reserves to buy Celo USD. And we're going to keep buying it until that price is reached to 1. And so that sounds good. It's just a basic supply and demand. The problem is that you don't get the accurate price. So for example, you get a bad quote. So even if the Celo USD is at $1 right now, it's quoted as 50 cents, or it's just inaccurate. And that will quickly drain your reserves. So we want an accurate quote there. And that's a part I don't fully understand. How do we get an accurate quote of a Celo USD, and how do we go from there? That is where I got a little bit stuck, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think what Chuck shared is mostly right, but just a few corrections. First of all, Celo, so Celo is like not fully collateralized. I would say like it's, I forgot what's exactly is a percentage, like something like 60-70% collateralized. It's like the underlying assets are BTC, ETH, DAI, and now we're adding a little bit the MCO2 tokens, and a little bit, and some Celo. I posted a website called celoreserve.org. It has like the most up-to-date, real-time, what's really in Celo's reserve. And then so Celo is like kind of like half algorithmic, half like collateralized. It's sort of, this mechanism is sort of similar to Fei protocol. I think Fei does something similar. And then like in terms of how do you keep the price stable, is that I posted another link. It's called mantle.finance. So that's like a reserve, like it's kind of like AMM that Celo runs natively. So this AMM like makes the assumption that like one CUSD always map to $1. And then this creates an arbitrage opportunity. Say like if Celo right now, if the CUSD right now is like above the $1 price, then there is an arbitrage opportunity for someone to buy CUSD from Mento and then sell it through the exchange. So they will make a profit out of that. That's kind of like the mechanism of how we keep the Celo stablecoin price stable. Yeah. Like someone will be able to hack it if they have, say, if they have a lot of money, more than like what we have in the reserve.
So they're able to buy Celo always at $1 on that exchange?
You're able to buy CUSD on the exchange for $1, and then you can exchange it. And then like, what's the Celo price? Yeah, the part you said you don't know how the price feed work is, so Celo runs our own oracles, and so on this exchange, like it fetches prices from the Celo oracles on like what's the live Celo price.
So just to recap, if I get right, so a Celo pretty much just tells that if you give me one Celo, I'll give you one CUSD back, right? So they don't really need to go check out some oracle outside to actually mint one CUSD and give it away to the user, whoever is giving one Celo. Now, so what you can do with this is that you can have an open market, something like Mento, where Celo will be pegged to CUSD, and similar to Uniswap. Celo price can go up and down over there, but there's one person out there always giving you one CUSD for one Celo. So if at all in the secondary exchange it goes a little up, what you can do is you can just go to secondary exchange, sell all your CUSDs over there, get the Celos, and go back to Celo themselves and exchange it to CUSD and make actually a profit. So thereby the open market is always pegged to whatever Celo is giving away.
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy to understand for me, at least. And I think other stable protocols work similarly, ish. This idea of an arbitrage opportunity and then a treasury. That one thing that we didn't get to yet is what happens if there's like like if the currency crashes, and or like if there's a big run. And did anybody see that? Like how the protocol responds to like either a big drop in value. I mean, I think mainly it would be a big drop in value of Celo.
Yeah, just to add to what Michael was saying, in my mind, what I want to understand is, suppose that CUSD is at like 50 cents right now. So what Celo wants to do is to use the reserves to buy those CUSD to push up the price. But at the same time, people are gonna be dumping Celo as well. So sorry, I'm still working out in my head. I feel like it's you might not be able to. So for example, the ratio, so for example, if you look at the ratio between Celo and USD right now, it's very good, but that doesn't really tell you that the value of Celo is too low, because both are being dumped right now. I don't know if that makes sense, but just sort of think through how that would work in a sort of a crash scenario would really helps.
So as I said, that Celo is very similar, has a similar mechanism to Fei. And Fei did have a crash, I think earlier this year, like in Feb. And I think like if a stable coin, say like, if it's depegged, I think it's recoverable. But if like say a stable coin from $1, it became like 20 cents, that's probably just means this, this is like going downhill and no one can save it. Does that make sense? Because like, yeah, because we're talking about two scenarios. Like I think stablecoin being a little bit depegged from like 98 cents to $1 to 98 cents. That's a pretty common, scenario. It will naturally recover with arbitraging opportunity. But then if you're talking about the scenario of people losing face in the stablecoin, then I mean, it's just, I forgot exactly how Fei recovered. If anyone else had better, ideas, but yeah, but as I said, because it's like part of it is algorithm controlled and arbitraging controlled, so like it seems reasonable to suspect there is a risk of it depegging significantly, then people losing like confidence. And yeah,
There are some other mechanics that I don't think really like they would sort of dull a crash, where there's something called a community fund, which is where a big chunk of the epoch rewards go into the community fund. The community fund can be used for to pay validators. It can be used to incentivize projects in the ecosystem and stuff. But if there's a significant deviation, I think in like either in the value of the reserve or in the what they need to support the stable currencies, they can start spending money out of the community fund. They can also have a governance mechanism to impose a tax on transactions, which of course would probably make people even that much less excited to use the currency. But there's a few sort of like things that can happen that might like slow a crash, but would all be signs that like things are going the wrong direction.
Yep. And that theoretically could happen to any protocol, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Chuck, you said you had a question that you wanted, or did we get it already?
Yeah, that was a question.
That's
just
a question.
sort of I think I was thinking more about this rare scenarios, but I think I agree with Lisa that those are, I mean, those are not the primary concerns of this protocol. If there's like a black swan event, then there's the black swan event.
Since we're coming down to the last sort of 7 or 8 minutes, does anybody have any outstanding questions that we haven't gotten to? Like, is there a reason that any of you decided to join the Celo call today? That and we haven't yet touched on something you were particularly curious or excited about? While people are, formulating or not formulating a question, sometimes I like to come back to, we are kernel fellows. We have this very interesting syllabus that we go through in our fellowship that really goes to about as fundamental a level about tokens as I've ever seen anyone go to. And so we talk about we talk about like what fact does the token transmit, and like what is its fiction, or what is its meme, like what is it, like how does is the protocol designed to make sure that people don't cheat, and I'm curious if there's any of the kind of more fundamental questions that that we like to ask in kernel about tokens that are interesting questions to ask about Celo.
By the way, someone in the chat said he cannot unmute.
Oh, Renee can't unmute. Weird. Hold on a second. It's Renee, did you acknowledge that the meeting is being recorded? I wonder if that might be it. Like if you haven't said that you're hold on, let me participants. Why can't Renee unmute? I'll unmute you. Oh, ask to unmute. I can only ask to unmute you. If you look around your screen and see if there's something that you might not have clicked on where you would have acknowledged that the meeting's being recorded, they may not let you speak unless you've acknowledged that the meeting's being recorded. I actually don't think I can unmute you. How about what do people think? I mean, I'll tell you what I think this token's sort of this protocol's, I call it a fiction. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to come true, but it hasn't come true yet. So I think it's not disrespectful to call it a fiction. The fiction is that if you let people, transact in crypto using their mobile phones, in a stable currency, in a very decentralized way where lightweight devices can act as full nodes in the network, and privacy is respected, then you will bring 1 billion people, give or take, into blockchain. And that would be a lot more people than currently have Ethereum wallets, Bitcoin wallets, or anything. It would be like a big step towards this promise of like a blockchain based financial future. Do we think Celo's going to make it, as we say? It's going to work. Will somebody else? Will actually this be Solana's lunch to eat because they're just so fast, and like it doesn't matter that Celo's mobile first, or is I mean, do we have? I'd prefer not to have any Bitcoin or ETH maxis like get apoplectic on the Tokenomics study group, but like, is there anybody who thinks that it was like bullish on this, or is skeptical?
I think given the amount of work like Facebook, for instance, had to put into making mobile first clients, like they have like a gradation of like Messenger Lite and M Basic and all of these different clients. Like I think Celo has space to really focus on this audience versus Solana may have like a performance advantage, but that doesn't mean that you're going to focus as much on this customer.
It's harder than it looks
to
be mobile first. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to chime in that, I think to make it mobile first and to make it like really launching to real people instead of crypto natives is a very hard problem to have, because there's different regulations in different part of the world. And then if you actually want people to cash in, then you do have to do some sort of bank connection. How do people on ramp and off ramp? Hopefully not through an exchange, but through their bank accounts, and you have to do all those crazy and different different countries that's different regulations on bank transfers, or even you need to acquire different licenses. I don't know. I think if anyone has contacts, I would be interesting to see why Novi, like Facebook's like crypto wallet, hasn't been able to like launch. I mean, they launched in like US and Guatemala, but like it seems to took them a lot longer than expected to launch. I heard is some sort of like regulation licensing issue. So I feel like in real world, if we're not talking about crypto natives, those kind of things just coming to be a very hard problems to solve, and it will take just years.
Well, because this is a kernel tokenomics study group, and kernel really leads with its values and ideals and inclusion. I think it's worth noting that Lisa's not the only Celo person in the kernel community. I think there's several other folks. Daniel, I want to say Olarte, if I'm mispronouncing his last name, is at Celo, is it C Labs, I think. There's someone else at least one other person at the foundation.
Anna?
Anna, and the guy working on Talent Protocol, whose name I've just escaped me. I think he just won like a Celo hackathon, so maybe he's putting Talent Protocol on Celo. So it's the orientation towards the broader population of the planet, and also being quite sustainable, and trying to bring the promise of crypto to the world is quite aligned with kernel. And so I imagine we will continue to see more Celo people and Celo projects and Celo ideas pass through our community. And we're at 11 o'clock. So unless anybody has anything else they want to add, I'm going to stop recording, and we will do this once more in January before Block 5 starts. I'll put something in the channel about voting for topic and scheduling for folks. And then, depending on what Vivek and Andy and others want to do, this may resume on some schedule during Block 5. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here and helping us with the firsthand knowledge. And thanks for bringing your friend Chuck. Good luck with your PhD, buddy. And thanks everybody else who participated in this, and have a great rest of your year, holiday, and New Year.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, everybody.